let's take a bit more time to explore the possibility of the cosmos and what's out there, and talk with Nick Pope, a journalist and UFO investigator. Nick, thanks for joining us. You know, I went to Roswell a few years ago for one of these UFO days, and it was fascinating. I mean, they have all kinds of speakers and events. So kind of tell us why you think having a day like World UFO Day is important.
Well, people have seen UFOs for decades, and I think they are absolutely fascinated by the subject. And why not? I mean, the question of whether or not we're alone in the universe and whether we're being visited, these are some of the biggest and most profound questions we can ask ourselves as human beings. So I think it really touches something visceral in us. And yeah, there is huge interest. The subject has gone from fringe to mainstream in recent years.
You know, I think you hit the nail on the head, because it used to be if you talked about this, people thought you had tinfoil on your head. But nowadays, look, there's economic implications. The United States government has come out and opened a lot of files, and now you find out that fighter pilots, naval officers, astronauts have sworn statements that they saw and are convinced that there are UFOs and extraterrestrials out there.
Absolutely, yes. And my own background is that I investigated this subject for the British government at the Ministry of Defense. So yes, there are hearings in the United States Congress right now, and also in the private sector. A number of tech billionaires are privately absolutely fascinated by this subject. We know, for example, that Paul Allen, who
Microsoft
now, but yeah, absolutely. He funded radio telescopes that listened for signals for this, and some of the other tech billionaires now are engaged in similar ventures, because the person that first discovers this is going to change the world.
Yeah. Okay, so how does media coverage of the UFOs impact public perception and consumer behavior?
Well, we certainly see science fiction play a role in this. We have, of course, the Hollywood blockbuster movies like Contact and Arrival, and then there are things like Three Body Problem. So it shapes public opinion, but the interest has to be there in the first place, and people are, as I say, absolutely intrigued by this. Some people are believers, some are skeptics, but almost everyone has an opinion on it.
Yeah, and also, if you think about why New Mexico at that point in time in history, it wasn't long after the first nuclear test. So adding all that up, you know, if something would get the attention of extraterrestrials, that could be it. So do you think countries now see economic changes? How do they look at celebrations like World UFO Day?
Well, I think they're interested. Different countries react in different ways. We know that the United States, Russia, and China have programs looking at the phenomenon. We don't necessarily know all the details, and the countries don't actually talk to each other about a lot of this. So everyone's kind of playing their own hand on this.
Okay, you've done your investigations, as you talked about, and I'm sure you've talked to other experts. What are some of the most compelling pieces of evidence for you that there are UFOs out there and people have encountered them?
It's when we have these things seen by military pilots, and some of them, of course, have filmed them on forward-looking infrared cameras mounted on the jets. Simultaneously, they've been tracked on military radar systems, and some of these things have occasionally shown up on satellites, although, of course, a lot of that data is classified.
Okay, so do you think that the world governments are, and I'm going to use this term, hiding information about UFOs from the public?
Well, we know that for every unclassified report that gets released, there is a classified version. So we're not being told the full story. Now, whether governments know that some of this is extraterrestrial and they're covering it up, or whether they don't know and they're just covering up the fact that they haven't got all the answers, that I don't know. But people are looking at it closer than ever before.
Okay, in the time that you've been covering this, how do people look at you? Do they come up and say, there's that whack job? Or do they come up and say, you know, I believe a lot of what you say, I'd like to chat?
The latter, because, of course, I did this for the British government, and the British government has declassified and released a lot of files, sent them to the National Archives. So people come up to me and they want to know what I did. You know, what they say to me, hey, Nick, what did you do in that job? What did you find out about it? And what do you think?